Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you joining us today. We're going to jump straight into a seriously intense, true-life engineering and physics case study. We're looking at one of the most powerful and frankly unforgiving forces in the entire underwater world. It's a phenomenon that's literally hiding in plain sight right within our everyday infrastructure. So let's dive into this. Listen to this description straight from our sources. An invisible and inescapable current dragging anything caught within its grasp. It sounds like a monster from a sci-fi movie, doesn't it? Something lurking in the deep. But this is a very real, very physical force. And before we get into the hard science of how it all works, we need to understand the terrifying reality of what actually happens when human limits meet sheer industrial power. Section 1. The Plate Tile Dam Disaster. This nightmare scenario played out at the Taille Dam in Belgium, right in the middle of a popular recreational lake. Let's walk through the timeline of January 4th, 2024. Around 5 p.m., after the official dive center had completely closed for the day, two divers, Christophe Gauder and Frédéric Pochet, got in the water. Now, these guys were not amateurs. They were highly experienced, elite technical divers equipped with advanced closed-circuit rebreathers and underwater scooters. They started a stealth dive into an area strictly prohibited to the public right by the dam wall. They went down to a depth of 50 meters, essentially knocking on the door of the active intake tunnels. Tragically, the very next day, search teams found their gear completely fragmented, and their remains were discovered up to a kilometer downstream. To wrap our heads around how two expertly trained divers were just lost in an instant, we really have to look at the massive scale of the machinery they swam up to. At that exact moment, at least two of the dam's massive Francis turbines were actively running. These machines were spinning at 166 revolutions per minute, moving an absolutely staggering 400 cubic meters of water every single second. So the crucial point is the absolute night and day disparity in the physical forces at play here. A diver wearing fins, swimming as hard as humanly possible, can only fight against a current of about 0.5 meters per second, and even then only for a really short burst. But the suction velocity at those intake valves, 6.0 meters per second. The divers were hit with a physically impossible 25-ton pulling force. There was zero time to react. They were instantly drawn straight into the power generation system. Section 2, the science of delta P. So, how does a current become so incredibly localized and so overwhelmingly powerful? Well, it all comes down to delta P, which stands for differential pressure. Think of it as a pressure imbalance between two adjacent bodies of water. Whenever water tries to equalize that pressure, or when it's mechanically sucked through an intake, it creates a sudden, extreme, localized suction. It's essentially a hidden monster lurking anywhere water is just trying to move from a high-pressure zone to a low-pressure zone. The physics are actually pretty straightforward when you think about it. Imagine a body of water with a higher hydraulic head, meaning higher water level and higher pressure, separated by a barrier from an area with lower pressure. Water desperately wants to equalize that imbalance. The exact second there is an opening, the water violently rushes through. There's a critical threshold right in front of that opening, a definitive danger zone, and once you cross into it, the flow takes over completely. And, here is what makes delta P so insidious. It isn't just a giant hydroelectric dam problem. Let's use a scale analogy here. You don't need a massive 790-meter-long dam to be in fatal danger, because the suction force is linked to the square of the water's depth. Just 0.5 meters of water, that's only about 1.5 feet, draining over a 30-centimeter pipe generates over 18 kilograms or 40 pounds of inescapable force. Fatalities have literally happened in water as shallow as 3 meters. Section 3, recognizing the danger zones. And this brilliantly illustrates the real trap of this phenomenon. If this force is so common, why can't we just sense it and swim away? Well, human senses are actually terrible at detecting it. A diver swimming toward a delta P hazard will feel almost zero perceptible increase in water flow, right up until they are literally on top of it. By the time your brain actually registers that the water is pulling you, the velocity has spiked exponentially and you are already caught in an inescapable grip. Because you literally can't feel it until it's too late, you absolutely have to know where it hides. And these fatal pressure differentials hide in plain sight all over our everyday industrial and civil infrastructure. We're talking about dam water outlets, the seals on navigational locks, municipal pumping station intakes, flooded underwater pipelines, and even the mechanical draw from ship thrusters and propellers. They are everywhere. Section 4, Commercial Diving Risk Management. So if these structures constantly need maintenance, how do professionals safely operate near them? Well, according to Lummi Nation commercial harvest diving standards and broader industry regulations, the requirements are incredibly rigorous. First, before a toe even touches the water, they calculate the potential forces and assess the site. Second, they physically intervene. Downstream flow is reduced to an absolute minimum to literally kill the delta P. And finally, standard scuba gear is strictly prohibited. Professionals have to use surface-supplied air with hardwired two-way voice communications to the surface. No exceptions. This all ties directly back to a core risk management principle highlighted by Patey in our sources. Avoid unnecessary risks that jeopardize safety without adding valuable gain to the operation. A true expert understands that balance. Pushing into an active, prohibited industrial intake just for the thrill of exploration, it adds absolutely zero practical value to the dive, but introduces off-the-charts risk. And sadly, it was exactly this miscalculation that made the stealth dive at Plate Tail so fatal. Section 5. Hydropower Public Safety Guidelines. Okay, so what about the rest of us? The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, has strict guidelines on how to build a physical wall between the public and these dangers. Facilities map out very deliberate safe zones versus danger zones. They build layered lines of defense designed to keep everyone, boaters, swimmers, and land-based visitors, completely isolated from the intakes and substations. Under Section 1242 of the Federal Power Act, these physical barriers and warning devices are actually legally mandated. We're talking about boat restraining barriers placed at least 300 feet upstream from the hazard. They require huge, clear danger signs facing the reservoir and downstream where the water is expelled. They mandate 6-foot chain link fences to cut off land access. And crucially, they require audible warning devices, like loud buzzers, to warn the public anytime there's a sudden flow fluctuation. And I want to speak directly to you for a second, because this is where the explainer meets your real life. Think about those standard safety buoys and floating boat restraining barriers you see when you're out kayaking or boating near a local reservoir. Those aren't just polite suggestions from the Parks Department. They are the absolute last line of defense before the brutal physics of the water take over. Section 6. Preventing the next tragedy. Let's bring back the visceral reality of this danger just one more time. According to our risk management sources, delta P accidents are the leading cause of occupational diving fatalities. There were 127 fatal events recorded from 1975 to 2014 alone. Despite all the guidelines, all the FERC regulations, and all the safety barriers we put up, delta P remains an unyielding, unforgiving force that simply does not negotiate. Today, right now, the turbines at the Plate Taille Dam keep spinning. The water keeps flowing, carrying that exact same crushing power just below the surface. So my final question to you is this. The next time you're at a lake enjoying the day and you see a simple warning buoy bobbing in the water, will you understand the terrifying invisible force it's actually protecting you from? Thank you so much for exploring this with us today. Keep learning and please stay safe out there.